Welcome to another episode of Trouble to Transformation. Today I have Matt Farnsworth. Matt is an award-winning content creator, entrepreneur, author, speaker, and transformation coach. From his early success in Hollywood, he was featured in the New York Times, Chicago Tribune, and New York Post. Matt's diverse talents and contributions have made him a notable figure in both the film industry and content creation. Matt Farnsworth is deeply passionate about developing programs for men's mental health. Through his transformational community, The Forge, he helps men rebuild their lives. All right. So, Matt, I know how deeply passionate you are about developing programs for men's mental health. How did The Forge come about?
Well, the Forge it just happened the other day. It was like this process where I was developing the garage, which was for men, and I had that as an old brand, but this goes back. I wrote this book and I've been trying to sell this marketing CRM and all this stuff. And every time I try to sell something like this, it seems to fail. And I went back through and I'm like, okay, why, if my social media is the stories are good, like the content I'm creating is really pretty powerful stuff. My story's powerful. I see a lot of guys out there creating content and they get a lot of sharing, a lot of people hitting on that. And so I started doing analysis, like deep analysis. Why am I being like why am I not having 600,000 people on YouTube? Why am I growing so slowly? Why when I share things to Instagram do people unfollow? Like what's happening here? And so I sort of lined up all the creators in the social media sphere that create. And I took a picture of each one of them and I put it up, and then I took a picture of myself and I put it up. And I said, what do you think of these people? And I said, especially in my space, trying to help men, right, overcome adversity through the pain that I've suffered. And it said, well, the other guys all have that classic, I forget the terminology, but it was like relatable. So they're going to have a harder time relating to him and accepting him as somebody who's struggled and gone through pain. And so the traction that I'm not getting is clearly defined by this, because I took a reel, I copied it from one of those other creators verbatim, B-roll, music, everything. Shared it, and it was nothing but hate. Now, for the other people that shared, the man that shared the exact same post, it was, I love you. Okay. So throughout my life as a young man, when I would go into a bar, I'd immediately get into a fight. Somebody would want to beat the shit out of me or fight with me. I shouldn't swear, but they'd want to beat me up, or we'd get into a fight. There's always been problems. Okay. And I thought as I got older, this would get easier. And I don't mean to sound narcissistic or shallow. I really don't care. I'm trying to help people. And so my message can tend to not resonate the way that it should. And so I said, God, what is the problem? Like, what have you done here? What are you looking for from me? Because I'm trying to share this messaging. We're spending money on marketing to get it out there. We want to help men. And it always came back to, you should be sharing my message. And I haven't been specifically just sharing my experience and my message of transformation through Christ. So when I'm in Knoxville, when I'm around here, when I'm in town, like every church has asked me to come and speak. Tell your transformation story, because they don't have that. They believe in transformation through faith. They don't have that first, I hate you. So when you ask, how do you deal with people who are atheists or people like that? Of course, there are some people that I can affect or I can help turn to the word, because, atheist and agnostic, I was once that way, and I was an agnoine. That means ignorant. And so if you don't have the gospel, you're ignorant. And so what God keeps putting on me is develop a program for men that helps them go from where they are, whatever frustrated state that they're in their life and their walk, to rejuvenated and walking in Christ and living um, in a manner worthy of the calling with which they have been called. And that's why I thought the book would be a good thing. You understand what I mean? Like, guys are like, I don't know if I want to buy into you. They have like a reservation about it at first. Like, you don't know about pain. Dude, I could walk and chew gum, which is really the entry level for acting. Yeah. And so, the real challenge in Hollywood is not compromising yourself so much that you end up in, you know, hell, which is where a lot of those, it looks beautiful. It's a gorgeous place. This palm trees, the sun, the good looking women, the parties. But do you think the devil's going to offer you something that looks ugly?
Like, what is your personal experience and opinion
No.
now with what's going on in Hollywood? Like, look at the disaster that's being unveiled. Did you see a lot of that when you were in Hollywood?
Yeah, it's always been there. I talk about it in the book. It was me and Colin Farrell were up for a lot of stuff, and I remember there was a movie called Tigerland, and I tell this story often. And I ended up getting the role. My agent called me. It was like that 5 seconds you want to hear. You got the part. You are the star of Tigerland with Joel Schumacher. And then there's this pause and a but. You're like, okay, what? He's like, well, you need to hang out with the director. So you're a decent looking guy, and they want you. So Joel Schumacher was notorious for having over 20,000 male partners by the time he passed away. And so then Colin Farrell gets the role. So what are you willing to do? That's how Hollywood works. And so it doesn't surprise, nothing surprises me. I mean, there's been pedophiles and, sexual predators in Hollywood forever. You've got new people coming in there with these ideas and dreams every single year that want to be famous. So they're searching for something that's already a lost cause. It's not going to bring them any happiness. Very easy prey.
In our life only dream about having a life in Hollywood. I mean, even for myself, you have these imaginary scenarios of what it would be like to be a famous singer or actor, and you've lived it.
Mhm.
And then, so can you share your experience about like the addiction and the spiral when that started in Hollywood?
Well, I went to Hollywood and I wasn't drinking a lot, but I got into it pretty quick. I had some success. I did a couple of TV shows here and there. I ended up in a house in the Hollywood Hills that I owned, and the parties happened. Like my neighbor was Nicolas Cage's ex, and she was a playmate. And then I'd go to his house, and it's just crazy, cocaine everywhere. It was total debauchery, and it's unrewarding. It's unfulfilling. You may think out there, oh, I'd love to be famous. I'd love to look a certain way. I'd love to have this life, but that is the devil. That is what grows that base, and you have to understand that nothing's going to change because you become famous. You're still you. You still live in your own life. People might look at you outside and say, "Oh, I know that person. Oh, wow, that's so and so," but they don't really care at the end of the day. So the validation that these people needed was incredible. Like Nicolas Cage, the validation was unbelievable. They would go from marriage to marriage to, major incident to major incident just to be in the press. So what you really have is a group of people who are sycophants that are seeking validation. That's what it is. So if you think it's cool, it's not. A lot of those people are the most unhappy, most miserable, and depressed people I've ever met.
Shell, and I feel like they lose a little piece of their soul every time they play those roles.
Yeah, you have to. You have to sell your soul. You want to be a Brad Pitt, you're selling your soul. I want to help men. That's my goal. But at the end of the day, if I can't get them to pay attention, then that's a complication. And so I use my Hollywood skills and my knowledge of storytelling to try and tell a story that makes them trust me. And I have been through some stuff, but it was all self-inflicted. Like you said, you had everything, and you're probably right. I could have done so much more earlier based on what I was blessed with. I didn't. I destroyed myself because of, well, lack of self-confidence, huge ego, no confidence. It's a big one in recovery. These guys that you work with, they got these huge, egos, but they have no self-confidence. And that was me. And so I ended up in a bad situation where I did flip a car 6 times. I ended up breaking my wingtip vertebrae in my neck. An inch to the left, I would have been paralyzed from the waist down. I had a near-death experience. And I came out of that, and I still didn't care. And that was troubling. That was, looking back, how troubled I was that I wanted to end my life. I was like, I'm done. That's it. I want out of this. I couldn't believe what I had done. My ego couldn't handle that my ex-wife had cheated on me. Wasn't in love with her. It was just about me. My ego saying, I can't believe this happened to me, and having to try to figure it out and investigating it. You want to hear a funny story? Okay. So I go to recovery after this car accident. And I might have told you this before, but I might not have. It's still a good story. I'm about 2 weeks into recovery. I didn't want to be there really, but I end up meeting with my ex. At the time I was married to her, and my counselor, Rick. Rick was crazy. Rick like had like a claw hand, and he was just a funny dude, man. He had been through a lot. And she came in and met him, and we talked, and she said, I'm done with the affair. Like, I'm done with everything that I've put him through. I love him so much. I want to make this work. I want to quit drinking. I want to make our family whole. She put on a good act, and I often say, if only she could have acted that well in the movies. And she decides she'll agree to a 30-day no contact. Rick wants a 30-day no contact. You guys can't talk to each other. You're done. You're going to go work on you. He's going to work on him, and you're done with this affair, right? She's like, yes, I am. And that was that. 2 hours later, I'm laying in my bed at rehab in the house, and a ping comes up on Airbnb. And I'm like, what is this? Why is someone resetting my password on Airbnb? So I dive in a little bit. I'm pretty techie and pretty nerdy. And I figure out how to reset my password through Facebook because it had been reset. So I figure out how to log in. And the first message that pops up is a picture of my ex saying, hi, Marcos. Thank you so much. I can't wait for my new boyfriend to arrive tomorrow. He'll be staying here for a month while he gets to know my 2 small children from a previous marriage. Okay, so the gaslighting was unbelievable. But now I have the address, Rhonda. What do you think happened? Um, I rent a car. The next morning, I wait outside their house. She shows up, this Airbnb, and they drive to a pancake house in Redondo Beach. And I wait outside, and I'm looking in the rearview, and I'm like, should I do anything? Should I go in there? What should I do? And I'm really pissed. And so I go in, confront them. What the hell's going on? And I throw some of the coffee off the table. And she's like, oh my gosh, she just kind of didn't care. She just didn't want me to be there. You could tell it was so over. And she's like, let's go outside and talk. So I go outside. I'm standing there with her, and we're talking, and it's just banal, pointless conversation. And this guy comes walking out, and I notice he's wearing my shirt. So she's been giving him clothes. Um, this made the guys in recovery just laugh so hard they couldn't believe it. And he comes out and he looks at both of us and he says, Could you guys maybe finish this conversation later? Because our pancakes just got here and they're getting cold. I was like, oh, I can't. Like, I just can't. And no, for the first time, I wanted to reach over and just grab him, but I had the neck brace. I could have done some damage still. And something came down upon me and like put its hands on my shoulders. Didn't know it was God at the time, but everything in me became calm. And I looked at her and I looked at him and I kind of welled up a little bit. Not because I cared about what they were doing. I was upset that I had actually gone there to that place. And I turned around and I just walked away. I got in the car.
That could have went very wrong
Oh yeah.
in another way.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. It was going to be me in prison because I was already looking at 7, 8 years in prison, being suspended for me if I were
Yeah.
good. And
Yeah.
this would have been instant. You're in trouble. You're done.
So now with that pivotal moment, how did that shape the rest of your recovery? Because I mean, it's not about what the addiction, it's why, right? So were you able to start working on yourself at that point?
That changed everything because I started to say, what is this recovery thing? I've got nothing else. What is this? What does this mean? And why am I here? And why do we all tell the same stories? And why do we all have this problem? So I started to pay attention and I started to help others and I started to tell my story and I started to communicate. And the tide started to turn. And at the end of the night, when we would do the recovery and we would say the serenity prayer, and I would start to say, what am I trying to control that I can't control? I would start to ask myself these questions. And that's when it all happened. That's when everything sort of came together. And then I got hit with the big one, which was I went home one night. I remember it was a beautiful night. The moon was out. I was walking home to the recovery center. I didn't have a car anymore. And I got there and there was a letter on my bed and I opened it and it was from the city of Orange. And it said, your charges have been increased. And I had been fighting, fighting, fighting. I would not submit to anything related to turning my will and life over to the care of anything as I understood him, which is a big problem in recovery and AA problem, basically, because when you bring a guy in and you say you have to turn your will and life over to the care of God as you understand it, but you don't give him a Bible to begin with, might be a little bit of an issue there because a lot of people don't get that. If you're lucky enough to figure it out, which I did in that moment, I hit my knees and I was like, whatever you want, like take me, kill me. From here on out, if you want to put me in prison for 7 years, fine. Then that's what it is. I'm just going to accept it. And then everything changed. Then I started to really flourish in recovery.
Yeah, because I find that a lot of the men that I work with in recovery, a big part of it is relationships, right? Loveless relationships, multiple relationships, kind of like where you were headed there in the beginning, right? How long were you married at that point with this woman?
I've been with her 13 years.
And did you meet her in the scene? Like, was it kind of like the party scene where you met?
Yeah, I mean, I had come off a rough thing where I was screen testing for Star Wars, and then I ended up not getting this role in this big TV show that was like 60,000 an episode. I think it went for like 30 episodes, and it was because I pushed it off because of this big audition I was doing for George Lucas, and I ended up they sent me this. My agent was like, "Go do this movie with Katherine Heigl," and so I went and I did this movie with Katherine Heigl, and my ex had one line on a pickup shoot at the end of the show and we met and it was definitely a party. It was like, let's go have a drink. And then it was on and it was comfortability. I was comfortable because she was willing to kind of go along with me. She didn't have much. She was from New Jersey, didn't have a lot of money, wasn't, she was just trying to hang on honestly in LA. And I was somebody who was established. So she was going to tell me anything I wanted to hear.
Yeah. So a bit of a party lifestyle for the both of you. Yeah. Yeah. And it's really hard, I think, for men and women to get into relationships where it's a little bit of a flat line, right? Where things are calm and peaceful because our nervous systems are so dysregulated and addicted to the adrenaline. Would you feel like that was a big part of it?
Well, I think when you first meet someone, it hits a lot of the same when you're hanging out, a lot of the same dopamine receptors as cocaine. It's powerful, but you also are oftentimes when you don't have the gospel, when you don't have God, when you're not in it, you don't understand what you're wrestling against. You're not really wrestling against the flesh and blood, but against, the rulers and the authorities and the powers of the dark world and the spiritual forces of evil in what is it in Ephesians in the heavenly realms. That's where you're wrestling. And if you're not equally yoked with someone, it's never going to work. So equally yoked is the concept that you're both coming into this relationship in a place where you're well. And a lot of people are not well. They get together based on a connection that is unwell.
They get together for all the wrong reasons, whether it be physical attraction, the good sex, the party drugs, or whatever it is. And then 6 months later, it's generally a dumpster fire. Did you see the red flags, though, the yellow and red flags before you went in? You just kept going?
They were like, I was being hit in the face with them. They were breaking on my face, the red flags.
You have for some of the men that I'm working with right now in recovery that are struggling in relationships? Like what advice would you tell them?
Oh, well, I would say that if you're really trying to have success in a relationship, don't look for it. Don't be out there looking for a relationship. Don't think that that's going to solve or complete you. What you have to do is work on yourself and your own spirituality and your own life. Get yourself together first. No woman is going to complete you. You're the man. So be a man. Don't go out looking for a woman to make you feel comfortable. Your job is to make her comfortable. Your job is to be the man and support that woman. Most men want a traditional woman. I want a traditional wife, but they don't want to do the work that it takes to have that traditional woman. They don't want to do the work to do the job, do the work to provide the way that they need to provide. And then also have the humility. Like your wife, you become one flesh with your wife. So whatever woman you're choosing, you're going to become one flesh. So you have to love her like Christ loved the church. That means you have to put her above everything. And a lot of men don't do that. They don't understand how important this choice is because the wrong person can destroy your life.
And I might get into a little bit of hot water saying this, but I stand to my word because I do work with a lot of men that have some domestic violence on their record. And when I get to hear the backstory, it wasn't like he, cocked off and punched her right in the face. Like it was more like, a bit of a conflict and some pushing and shoving and maybe wrestling over the cell phone because there was some text messages and whatnot. But of course, 911 gets called. And then there's a K file, no matter what anybody says. But what I'm seeing is that the women are not being held accountable. The men are the ones suffering the consequences, having to go to jail or having to go to treatment or these programs, but the women are not being held accountable. And I do recognize that there's a lot of domestic violence on both sides.
My ex was arrested for felony domestic violence against me. Mm-hmm. So after she had the affair, before I went to recovery and before I got in the accident, I didn't react in a way. I'll say this, guys, to guys out there that are maybe in trouble because of what you just said. Like there's an affair, there's a text on the phone, and the guy's angry. She's probably doing something wrong. Look, if she is, let her go. Look, I knew a guy who figured his wife was having an affair. This girl's having an affair. He let it go. One night she shows up late, comes in the door, and he's eating dinner. And she comes in and she's just overwhelmed. And she admits it. And he looks down, he looks up at her, and he says, "I'm really disappointed to hear that." Gets up, cleans up his plate, puts it away, goes into the bedroom, and goes to bed. Do you know how much that freaked that woman out? She was expecting a gigantic reaction from that. The next day, when she left for work, he left. He's gone. There's nothing there anymore. It's over. Guys, if she cheats, she's been with another man. Do you think she's going to respect you again? Why are you hanging on to it? I went after my ex because I was weak. I went after her in a way of trying to figure out what had happened because I needed validation to understand why. And I was searching for the why in someone who wanted to hurt me. What do you think that's going to bring back? You're going to end up in jail. No. So she got arrested. So yeah, we got into an argument because she came back with this concept of telling me that the affair was over, moving back into the house. Well, it wasn't. She was exposed. And when she was exposed, she was angry. And so she started throwing everything and breaking our wedding picture and screaming and scratching the side of my face and slapping me. And the neighbors called the police. And when they showed up, I didn't say she had done anything. It wasn't a big deal. I was like, whatever. I mean, I've boxed. I didn't feel like I'd been hurt. But she admitted, oh, yeah, I hit him because she didn't think it was a big deal. Well, it is in California. It becomes an instant felony in California because of the O.J. Simpson case. So if you even touch someone, your spouse in California, and the cops are called and you admit it, it's felony. So I did let her off. I didn't show up in court. I did make sure that she didn't have to face those charges, which was a mistake. I should have shown up. I should have fought that, and I should have taken my kids and controlled the whole situation. But my advice to you guys out there is to stay cool, keep your calm, because if you don't, you're going to be the one with egg up. You're going to be the one that ends up with egg on their face.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the documents of the case are not really well laid out. It's just a K file. So we don't even really know a lot of the details, right? It's just violence against women. So it's really bad for them too if they have to spend any time in prison, because that's like you said, the egg on the face.
Yeah, it's a bad thing. My relationship with her was really volatile from the beginning. Kids calmed it down. I quit drinking for like 12 years during that time, and I think that kind of held it together.
Yeah, when I'm working with people that are getting out into the dating arena, I always recommend a 90-day dating plan. No intimacy, no holding hands, no spending the night. It's a very casual lunch date. Get to know somebody. But it's interesting because when I ask them, man or woman, what are your non-negotiables? What are your boundaries? And not boundaries from a wounded place, but your actual values, your non-negotiables. People don't know what to answer. They don't know.
Yeah. If you ask a man, what do you believe in? That's one of the first things I ask. Like if somebody gives me a hard time on social media, what do you believe in? If you ask me, I believe in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, my family, my wife, working hard, discipline, resilience, never giving up, America. You can ask me I can tell you a number of things that I believe in. But if you ask people that question, men in general, a lot of them will be like, I don't know, man, like being a good guy. I don't know. No. What are your values? What do you believe in? Nothing's scarier than a man that doesn't know what they believe in and hasn't found their purpose.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And then there's that cognitive dissonance too. Like if you have your values and they're over here, but your actions are over here, there's that cognitive dissonance that happens where the anxiety or the low self-worth or whatever it is, because deep inside of you, you know you're not living up to your values through your actions.
Yeah, and so that's wrestling with God again. And if you're not wrestling with God, you're not really there. Like Jacob wrestled with God all night by the side of the river, and God could have overtaken him at any time, but Jacob wouldn't let go. You always should be wrestling with God. Look, we are fallen. We are in Romans 7:15, and I know I'm quoting scripture here, but this is so. this is so important because we do not understand our actions. We do what we don't want to do, but the very thing that we hate, right? For I know nothing that dwells, for I know nothing good dwells in me, that is in my flesh, for I am fallen. So you are fallen, and you will always have sinful thoughts, but you should be wrestling with your faith. And if you're wrestling, then you're in worship. If you're not wrestling with God, then your values are not going to align with your actions. Does that make sense?
And at the treatment recovery center, we do have Bible study. And there is church groups and whatnot. And quite a few of them do sign up. So, and then part of the personal steps too is, always addressing the higher power, because we do have AA and NA as well within our program. So yeah, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, that's what they really need, is to be able to work on themselves. But first, put God first.
Absolutely. It's the three pillars, right? Source, self, and then your relationships. Right. So when you get hit with resistance, like people that might not have a strong religious or spiritual faith, how do you handle some of those, like those people that are pushing back a little bit?
Well, I mean, I get it all the time. I have people tell me, do you like to preach before or after you do blood rituals and get tattoos? It goes like that. And then you'll go like to the profile of the person, and you'll see one video they've created, and they'll be like driving and they're talking, and they'll say, I'm going to really try on this video not to say, the N word and, kike and like all these terrible, horrible words. And then they'll go on to say something like, young people out there really need to set aside the distractions and pick up the Bible. And you're like, what is this paradox? Like, what is wrong with people out there? And then you realize that there's this reprobate mind that exists, that is pushed in this world. There's a lot of sickness out there. And so when I deal with these people, I just say, what do you believe in? Because a lot of them will say, it's really sad that you believe in some fake invisible spirit that doesn't exist. And I'll say, okay, I mean, fair enough, but how do you know that it doesn't exist? And what is your purpose? What do you believe? And they oftentimes can't answer what they believe. And then I'll lead in with my story saying, I was like you. I believed in nothing until God showed me otherwise. It just hasn't been shown yet to you. And they'll say, oh yeah, what are you wishing that I have a bad experience? And I'll say, kind of, because I want your salvation. So my whole goal is salvation for those people that hate me.
Yeah. And that was part of my recovery journey as well. I mean, it wasn't the pivotal moment, but it definitely started planting seeds as a friend of mine came and picked me up and took me to church. And I had maybe like an hour or two of sleep. I had just come off a bender, a cocaine infused bender for 3 days. And he took me to church. Oh, yeah. And let me tell you, I will never forget that moment. It was incredible. I have to say that day I felt the Holy Spirit, right? And it was an all black church. It was an all black. Oh my God. Oh, it was so animated. Everybody was crying and dancing and singing. But it was interesting because they had a guest evangelist there that day. And she didn't know who I was. She didn't know if I was a regular to that church. And she called me up to the front because she could see the suffering in my eyes. Yeah. And about 8 ladies, all dressed in white, put their hands on me and they all prayed for me. And I'm telling you, I've never felt anything like that in my life. And maybe I shouldn't say that wasn't the pivotal moment, because it was definitely a moment in time that changed the trajectory of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does. Yeah, it does. That's a big change, and God brought you there for a reason, and the reason was Rhonda's never seen anything like this before. She's going to pay attention to this, and yeah, and so what happened there is really interesting because we live a parallel with Christ. So when you die, when you indwelled there, the indwelling happens. You were accepting Christ. So it's not just about his teachings, not while he was here on earth. It's really about his death and resurrection. So we all live that exact experience. You were this person that was broken. You were introduced. You died in Christ, and you're resurrected. Look at who you are now. So we run this. We're in this with him, and a lot of people have a very hard time with that. People don't want to hear Christ.
And the thing is, Matt, it was really interesting because I had this old Bible that I had found in an alley, actually, in someone's garbage. It was a leather Bible, and for whatever reason, I just packed that thing around with me everywhere I went. And that day that I came home from church, my dog had somehow got it out of one of the boxes, and it was laying face down on the floor. It had opened up, laying face down. He chewed a little piece of it. And I thought, you know what? Just for shits and giggles, I'm going to open this up and see where it landed. And word for word, it was exactly the sermon that evangelist had spoke about that day. Like, yeah. And
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Nothing surprises me anymore. People don't understand. Yeah, God is guiding you all the way.
this was real. This was like, it was so real. Even though I could not see it, I could not deny the things that were happening in my life in that moment. But one thing my friend did say to me, he said that now that you have experienced the Holy Spirit in your life, there's going to be a spiritual warfare that happens over you. And he goes, and these are kind of the things to look for. And that started happening too.
That's the fear that I was talking about with my wife last night. And what I recognized quickly is that there is no such thing as fear. God did not instill you with fear. That's something else on this earth that's causing you to have that happen. It's not God. You do not have fear. It doesn't exist. You don't have the ability to look at yourself and feel humiliated because that's not what God gave us. Do you understand? So spiritual warfare is going to happen, but don't be afraid. I've been afraid for so long to start talking about Christ, to start sharing this message, because I was afraid of the power. You see, when I died and I came back, I had a unique ability to understand when people were suffering. Really strange ability. It's not, I don't know what it is. It just, like when somebody that talked to me, I can immediately see like maybe what they may be suffering with. And so I've ignored this, and I've tried to push my marketing, and I've tried to push all of my business stuff, and I'm good at that. I can do that, and I can make money helping people scale their businesses. But is that really what I'm supposed to be doing? And why do I not share more of a gospel message on the platforms that I do social media on? Because in Knoxville, people will ask me to come and speak, and I get up and I talk about my story and how powerful it is. And a lot of them at the end are like, you should be doing this regularly. And I fight it. I'm like, I don't want to come speak at your church. Like I'm good. So I fight this. I've been fighting it and fighting it. And God is finally like, look, I'm not even going to let you have any traction with anything until you start doing what I've called you to do. Because back when I saved you, you're supposed to be doing this. And now I see it. And it just happened a couple of days ago where I just went, that's it. Like I'm done trying to fight it. I know there's going to be spiritual warfare, and I know that there's going to be attacks. So my wife was talking about it in bed with me last night. And she's like, the only thing that scares me is what She said, you have a very powerful voice. You speak very, very well. You've been told this. And if you begin to preach the word on a regular basis on a social media platform that is owned by the devil, what do you think is going to come after us? And I was like, well, you make a good point, but what if I don't?
Yeah. What if you don't? Yeah. I feel like that's almost a
Mm,
disharmonious act, is not living to your true purpose. Right. Yeah.
yep.
And that message rings through my mind a
Mm,
lot, right? Because I feel like the work that I'm doing right now is divinely guided as well. I've had several mornings where I've woke up in that very lucid state where it felt like somebody was yelling in my ear that said, you need to dedicate the next 15 years to this work. And here I am, you know.
yeah. And then the world wants to tell you that you need to be popular. You need to make more money. You need to look a certain way. You need to be in this kind of shape. You need to have this kind of partner. You need to afford this kind of house, this kind of social status. But that's not what really makes you happy. What really makes you happy is when you're helping other people. You're a servant leader. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the job that I am doing right now, definitely, it barely pays the bills. But I would not see to it that I would leave there for something even, another opportunity somewhere, because I know I belong here. I can feel it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's beautiful. I was working a job for 2.8 years and they fired me 2 months ago. Just canned me one morning. It was, I was making 300,000 a year there, maybe more. And there was a lot of collusion at the top. It was a dirty business because it was run by BlackRock, which we know is one of the most evil corporations in the world. I mean, this is part of the, part of Klaus Schwab's one world order. I'm very sensitive to that. And I didn't like it. And I was kind of happy. I was really happy to let me go. But then I look back at it now and I'm like, this is all part of it. I couldn't speak then. I was so tired of listening to their garbage, Rhonda. I would have to watch these episodes on ethics in the corporate environment. It's crazy here when Kamala was in and Joe Biden was in. It was some of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. I mean, you would ask the woman a simple question when she was out debating, and I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole on this if you don't want, but you would ask her, something like, "Have you ever been to the border?" We have a horrible illegal immigration crisis. I mean, it's just the worst thing we've ever seen in the United States in the history of the United States. Okay. And she says, well, I've never been to Europe. That's her answer. I've never been to Europe. And you look at her and the media is so one-sided and so liberal that they can't say to her, are you okay? Have you been using drugs? Because you're not answering my question. They just kind of accept that she's given them the runaround and that she's not going to answer this question, which is why she lost the election, because she had no policy. And so it was very frustrating to be a conservative American who believes in Christ in that 4 year span. It was like watching the nation, they tore it apart. They destroyed as quickly as they could God and any morals. And they brought people into the United States who are raping and killing our women and harming our children. And it's awful. I don't even know what's going to happen prior to the deportation because they're going to become more violent.
Calm before the storm that's happening, for sure. And it's interesting, Matt, that you talk about the conservative and liberal, because I just recently read a book called Avenging Child Sex Abuse, Vigilante Justice in Community and Prison.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a moral psychologist, Jonathan Haidt, that actually came up with these questions that he delivered to liberal and conservatives. And the results of that were like astounding. I couldn't even wrap my head around it. And yeah,
I mean, the differences in what they answered.
just going to give you three
Mm.
examples, or actually, no, I'll give you two. One of them was called Flags to Rags. So a woman found an American flag in the trunk up in the attic, and because she didn't really have a use for it anymore, she cut it up into rags. Now, yes, okay. So the differences between conservative and liberal thinking, like honestly, I can see why there's such division, right? Coming down to the five original
Hmm.
morals, and one of them is loyalty, like loyalty and betrayal. And cutting up a flag to me is betrayal. That's not loyal to your country. But here's one that is kind of gross, and I'm going to say it anyways. Is A gentleman goes to the supermarket and grabs a frozen chicken to cook for dinner. But before he cooks it for dinner, he decides he's going to have sex with a dead chicken carcass. Conservatives
Hmm.
scored
Hmm.
really high on disgust, that no, we don't do those types of things. Liberals, they said, well, no, it's totally up to him. If he wants to have sex with that dead chicken carcass, that's up to him as long as no one was harmed in the process. And those were the differences between
Hmm.
liberal and conservative
Yeah.
thinking. It blew my mind. And that survey
Hmm.
is available online, by the way. Some of the questions.
Oh my gosh. Hmm. Oh my gosh. My wife and I watch this all the time. We watch a lot of YouTube. So we'll watch Sky News Australia, who has I forget the name of the show, but it's Rita Panahi, and she runs a show that she posts all kinds of liberals losing their minds, like when the election happened and Donald Trump won, and their reactions. And the problem that you have with the liberal mind is that it doesn't stop there. That's just one example. That's a chicken, but it would quickly become a child. And that child, they would say, and some would say, they enjoyed it. And it's okay to be attracted to minors. We have to understand where that person is coming from, their viewpoint. No, we don't. No, we don't. We don't need to understand your viewpoint. And if you look at liberal males and liberal females, do you notice the difference in appearance as well? I mean, some just scream, I'm a liberal woman. I mean, my gosh, the blue hair and the nose ring is a giveaway, right? Uh, but it's incredible to see the difference in the male as well. It's almost like there's a lack of testosterone inside of these liberal men. And it's like a different look. It's like Tim Waltz was like, what are you? I didn't understand it. I couldn't wrap my head around what was happening in front of me. But I'm so grateful that it turned out the way that it did. Now, I'm not saying that I just buy into right wing conservative media. I believe you have to make your own informed decision. You can't just be a lemming and listen to what everyone says. You have to think about what you've seen and analyze as much as you can and make your own decision. But I am glad about what happened.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And going back to that survey too, like the whole idea of that being brought up in this book was the fact that child perpetrators are not serving any time in jail. Uh,
That's the reprobate mind. That's the government that wants to destroy America.
is that the
Hmm.
liberals have empathy for the victims, but they have enough empathy left over for the perpetrator as well.
Yeah, they're just like the United Healthcare guy that was just assassinated. He's got more followers than he ever had before. The guy that killed him. They're analyzing the murderer's, the assassin's face for his attractive qualities. Why is he attractive? And what's attracting women to him? Why are people following him? Mainly liberals. Where's your morals? Like, why do you not understand that a human being died? They were killed. They had a family, and whether or not you agreed with what they were doing doesn't mean they should have been killed. But they justify that, right? Justify that killing, but then on the other hand, we'll say it's okay for you to be attracted to children. That to me is a reprobate mind. That seems biblical. It feels biblical. Back in the 50s, was it the 50s or 60s? They wanted women in the workforce. They basically put out campaigns that say you're just as strong as a man. You can do everything that a man does, and And women today are, by the way, are still doing the same jobs that they were 50 years ago. They haven't picked up they're not out, saving people's lives and running into buildings and apprehending violent perpetrators. They're not building our buildings that were in our houses. They're not doing construction. Those are not the jobs that they're doing. They're still doing the nursing and the behind the desk work and the work that keeps them safe. But the idea at the time was build them up, make them believe that they need to leave the home because of taxes. So if you get the women out in the workforce, you can double tax that home. You're putting more money into the market because now you've got stimulation and childcare and there's a lot that goes into this. But they wanted to break apart that nuclear family. What they really wanted was the money. They wanted to be able to tax the woman and the man. And now that's what's happened. So now we've got a lot of people who don't have a mother at home the first years of their lives. And it's very difficult for a lot of people out there that don't have that nuclear family because it does bond you and it is part of it saves you. It creates an environment of health and provides stability that kids need today in order to succeed. And when you take that away, they do end up lost and they search for that in idols and people who are not good people to follow. You're going to be very, very sad later on when you look up and you say, I'm the woman that's working 24/7. I don't have kids. I don't have a husband. I don't have the life that I wanted. It's 10 years down the road. You know how we were when we were young? We were rebellious and we were easily swayed, and you could easily buy into something like that says, I'm just me and I can do everything on my own and I don't need you. They're selling them that. My daughter used to say, I can do it myself. When she was little, she used to say that all the time. Reminded me of that. But you don't have to do it all yourself. And the idea is we were put here to be together, male and female, to procreate, to create a family, to take care of those children and have a wonderful life. And that's what that's what makes up a wonderful life for 99% of people. But they're pushing a different agenda now. It's all this be famous on TikTok and YouTube and these social media platforms that are creating just nothing but pure narcissism, and OnlyFans where you've got women that are sleeping with 100 men. It's so sad, but there's nothing you can really do about that except spread the word, pray, and take care of your own life. It must be a testosterone issue as well. And I think it has to do with like what RFK is talking about, like with our food and with what we consume and all of the chemicals and all of the food that is, got preservatives and they're poisoning men and women and causing cancer. And we're lowering our testosterone levels. We're lowering our mating rituals that way because women are attracted to men that have muscle. Women are attracted to men that have testosterone. They want a man who takes control in a good way, who, when he calls her, he says, hey, I set up a date for us. We're going to dinner at this place. I'm picking you up at this time. She doesn't typically have to think about that. And a lot of times women don't want to think about that. They would prefer to have a man just say, here's what I'm doing for you that night. Open the door for her, pay for the meal, take her home, be a man. There's nothing wrong with that. And we've trained women to believe that they have to meet the man halfway, pay for half of the meal, and step up in that way. And there's a lot of young men out there today that I know personally who now, because of the way they were raised, say they're 30, 35 and younger, that believe the woman in the relationship should not only work and provide for the family as well as him while he sits back on the weekends and watches football, but she should also be the one to totally take care of the kids. So now you've given yourself, ladies, a huge burden because that man, those young men are expecting this. And so my goal is to teach young men that's not how it works. If you want to have a happy relationship, you have to be the man. If your wife wants to work, great, and she enjoys it, that's fine. But you need to be the breadwinner. You need to go out and provide for that woman if you want to have a traditional wife, because she wants to be at home. She wants to take care of those kids. She likes being in the kitchen. And there are a lot of women that love to cook and do that and have that life. They love to take care of a home, but you have to be able to provide so she can buy the things she needs to buy to take care of that home without complaining. And a lot of guys don't want to do that, but they don't understand how happy that dynamic is. And if you really have a woman that loves you, you don't have to be super wealthy. Yeah, if you're a man, you better be capable of extreme violence when you are out if something attacks you or your family, but extreme emotionality and the ability to be intimate with your wife. You need to be able to talk to her. And that's why I say prayer comes in, how important it is to pray with or over your wife. It sounds so odd to do, and it's so strange to begin that process. I had a call with Luke yesterday. Awesome. Yeah. And it reminded me of prayer. Just when I brought, he was tearing up because I was mentioning to him, this wasn't you. Luke is, if everybody doesn't know this, Luke is somebody that Rhonda and I both mutually know, and he's been in some trouble. He's facing a prison sentence very soon, like the next week. And so I had a call with him to talk to him and help him understand that this is not the end of the road, that this is just his forging. He's being molded by God. And what he has to understand is this is not the end. And what he did wasn't him. He was controlled by a person outside of him. And when he recognized that, he teared up because he started to see that he could get a grasp on this and he could move forward. He's in that process where you can see men go from denial, ripping that IV out of poison they've been feeding themselves for years, to going, wow, and you really have to be truthful with yourself, to that redirecting the fuel that they've used to destroy their lives into rebuilding their lives. And then they begin to have the resilience to delay the gratification and understand they can't have expectations, because expectations are going to lead them down a path of destruction. They have to keep moving forward no matter what in a positive way. And then they start to really find their purpose. And Luke is at that point where he's been doing this for a while and he's about to start finding his purpose. He's just got to walk through a few more trials, but he's a young man and he'll be okay.
I love that you are still connecting with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Amen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like him. I want to see. I like helping men. I like helping men in particular because my story resonates with them once they get to know me. The truth is that the passion I have is to help young men and men in general, people of any age, get through a relationship struggle that they're going through, and that's why I started this Forge. It's going to be a community for men. I'm going to do a couple of calls a week for free, just helping them with anything that they need. And what's really interesting about this particular program is it really helps them build their comeback blueprint. And you don't have to be at rock bottom. You could be somebody who just wants to change their job. But what it helps them do is reclaim their lives, understand spiritual warfare, find their faith, find their purpose. And then I'm giving them, through my skills in marketing and sales and entrepreneurship, their own free CRM. So they get their own ability to send out sales funnels and nurture campaigns and text messages. And I'm actually giving them the tools and the arsenal to start selling themselves. So it's not just like you come in, you don't just come into the program. I'm going to teach you how to reclaim your life, how to tell your personal brand story, and how to get it out there to the world. Right. So that's kind of it all came together for me, like all of this Hollywood stuff and content creation and my speaking and my destruction and my resurrection and everything that happened to me it all happened because I was meant to do this and help men with this particular course. I'm fortunate to have made it through without a lot of support. I would prefer men didn't have to completely destroy themselves like I did in order to ask for the help. I needed to get help, and you would have thought that when I went into recovery with 30 staples in my forehead and a neck brace, looking like I was Frankenstein's failed project, that I would have been ready to go, but they had to sell me like they were selling me a used car. Like, I don't need this. So denial is a big deal. And I would say to men out there, and just in terms of the whole mental health for men, that's a really difficult question because the state of where it's at, you see it a lot more often than I do. How do you feel it needs to change? I was there. I mean, I was told by a therapist, you need to go and take care of yourself right now because that woman is not thinking about you. And I didn't. I continued to pursue this and it drove me mad. But I would say you're absolutely right. Yeah, you can tell men to go and ask for help, but then where are the resources and what are they? That's why I created this forge. You see, men need someone who's been through it, but someone that can also talk to them on their level, like empathize with them. Like I've been in the trenches in the worst situations. Now there are men that have been in prison for 20 years, wrongly convicted, wrongly accused. There are guys that have a lot worse stories than I have. But I just happen to have the ability to relate and teach. So I have the ability to help men on their level. And a lot of them haven't fallen as far as I have. And I'm sure there are specialists out there that can help people who are really struggling with massive drug addiction and issues like that. We're talking about guys, like you said, before their marriage falls apart, you know, before they end up in a bad addiction, you know, before they end up taking their life. Reach out and just say, look for resources. My biggest problem was in the self-help market. Do men, especially men who are looking to find spirituality, do they have a lot of good options out there? There's a lot of self-help out there, but even the self-help books, I almost wrote like an anti-self-help book, you know, because it's like, yeah, self-help is great, but do you have God? Do you have a spiritual awakening? Or do you recognize what's happening all around you that's taking you over to make you feel this way? My default was defensive. I don't want to talk about it anymore because I was afraid of having emotion. I was afraid to feel or emote, cry, be sensitive. But that's what changes when you get into spirituality. You start to recognize that those are human emotions that are okay to feel, and nobody is judging you. A lot of men feel judged and are nervous about expressing their emotions because they feel like they're weak.
Yes, and that goes back to societal
Mm.
norms, how we've been indoctrinated for decades that men do not
Yeah.
express that vulnerability because it's a sign of
Mhm.
weakness. And I think that more men need to talk about their stories and express themselves in ways that is vulnerable.
Yeah, that's why it was so cathartic to look through my story and recognize all the damage that I had done, not only to other people but to myself. Why do we hate ourselves so much? Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we get into relationships with someone who may not even like us? Why do we stay in that? Why do we do these things to ourselves? That is a riddle that is, to me, goes back again to biblical reference. It's in the gospel. It says there that you need to be one with yourself. You must take care of your temple. You must take care of yourself, you know, immaculately. You were given this gift. And I don't think a lot of us look at our lives and wake up every day and say, I was given this gift, this body. I can walk. I can talk. I have a brain. Can function. A lot of people have disabilities that don't allow them to function the way that most people can. And we take a lot of that for granted. And I think that society's told us we have to be this big thing in order to feel accomplished, especially for men, but that's not really where it's at. I got to tell you, when I met my wife, didn't have very much money. I left Hollywood. I was no longer living that famous type, wannabe lifestyle. I was just this guy who grew out a huge beard so people would kind of leave me alone. And I wanted to be left alone. I was enjoying my serenity and my peace without the world bothering me. And I decided I was not going to date women anymore. I was kind of done with it for a minute. I was like, this is just not, these are not the women that I want to be with. I'm not going to meet somebody on a dating app and decide based on their picture whether or not I would sleep with them and then meet with them and see if that's possible. So I waited. And it was interesting because my wife now that I met at the time, we would circle each other 26, 27 years ago in Hollywood. So she lived in way out in Yorba Linda, and she ended up taking a job at the Beverly Center. It was a mall on Pico and Santa Monica, in between Pico and Santa Monica. And she took a job there, and I would visit that Bloomingdale she worked at on a regular basis because I had a girlfriend that worked a counter over from her. Yeah, and it's so funny. And then we both would run into each other. Like we knew we were running into each other at places like Saddle Ranch on Sunset at the parties. And then 20 years later, 25 years later, when I was in recovery, I didn't realize that the house she was living in a miserable situation with her ex was 1 block from my recovery home. And then I left recovery, moved back to Long Beach, and she ended up taking a job like 9 miles away from that area in a place called Naples, which was near Long Beach. And I would have to ride my bike through Naples every single day to go to the Gold's Gym. And I saw this med spa up there. I'm like, I got this scar on my forehead. It's terrible. Maybe they can do something for it. I don't know what they do in these places, but maybe they can do some kind of treatment on my forehead because it was deep. And I went in there, and sure enough, she worked in there. And so it took 26, 27 years and 2 divorces later, but I was well. And that's the point I'm trying to make. I wasn't looking for anything, guys. I didn't think about women. I only thought about what I needed to do for myself and my kids, but I put God first, and then my job and my work, my kids, and then my own needs. So I just organized it in a way that I felt was going to be the most successful for me, and trying to keep myself away from women for a little while just to know who I was. And once I realized who I was able to build my body. So I will say, guys out there, like if you want to have success, you want to meet the woman of your dreams, go work out, build muscle, because when you build muscle, you learn about persistence and building resilience. And this is no different than business. It's going to take time. It's going to take energy. You're not going to be able to build muscle overnight. It's going to show you how to delay gratification. You have to learn how to eat right. You have to learn how to take care of yourself. And in this, you learn to take care of others. Believe it or not, when you move the body, the mind follows. And so I met her, and that was it. Like I started personal training with her, and things just took off.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yes. And would you say that that's one of your strategies with the Forge, is teaching people about, physical fitness and
Oh, without a
nutrition?
question. I mean, I was a personal trainer prior to stepping into all of the marketing that I've done. I got my certification. I was training people. I had plenty of clients. It was really fun. But what I found is I was working with them on changing their mindset more than I was the workouts. Like, here's the workouts, really easy. You do these movements, right? And here's how you do them. Now, there's a lot to it because you have to know about form. But the big part was really teaching them how to change their mindset when they weren't with me, to control themselves and teach them how to delay the gratification of grabbing that snack. How do you change your mindset? So, what committee up here in your mind is telling you that you need to go eat right now? Who did you hire and who hired them? What happened to you as a kid that told you need to listen to these people because it's time to fire those people? So, I would have them fire that committee, and I would have them hire a new one. And then I'd ask them to go to that committee instead or call me or text me or whatever. So I had people lose hundreds of pounds, hundreds. Yeah, and it was fantastic. So I will say, guys, move your body. Yes, that's part of it. I have workouts. I recorded like 300 professional workouts.
That's part of the
Oh yeah,
Forge?
I have my own fitness app that I did back in the day. It's crazy. Like the Forge is like nuts. So if they come in, they have like a whole module that's dedicated to that, and so they get access to beginner, intermediate, and advanced workouts.
Wow, I love
Yeah.
that. So, share with us then the future goals for the Forge and your work in mental health.
Really, I think I'm just going to take myself from where I'm at now and keep positioning all of this content for you guys out there to help teach you how to let the Lord in, how to bring spirituality into your life. And for those guys that are out there that are on the fence, that are teetering, that are like, what is it all about? That are curious about it. This is a great community for those of you that are struggling, that have been through, trauma and are having a difficult time with their faith. They feel lost. They're having a tough time in their relationship. They're not feeling like the man that they want to feel like. Then this is the community for them. And I see a big future because there's a need for a different kind of self-help out there for men. And this is it. Yeah, this is very much the perfect spot for men to come in. And the coaching's extended. So I'm going to be doing marketing. Like I'm teaching them how to become a whole man and then actually make money as well.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. Yes. Yeah, I really love that. So where can they find you, Matt?
Oh, my social media is just Matt Farnsworth. You type me in, you're going to find me. It's I used to have mattfarnsworth.com, but I let it lapse like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and some kid in England bought it, and I've been watching him grow up ever since. Yeah, yeah. A lot of Farnsworths in England. So it's mattfarnsworth.net. You can find like one-on-one coaching there. I do transformation coaching there. Uh, and I help people in all aspects, if they need to. Look, I've grown businesses I've helped businesses grow by over $12 billion over the last 10 years. It's been a crazy ride. People hire me to help them with their businesses, to help them do marketing and teach them how to tell a brand story. But at the same time, I often go to them and say, look, you may be the kind of person that, can't see your toes over your stomach. So if I help you with that aspect of it as well, I believe your business is going to grow too. Yeah, if you're trying to be an entrepreneur and you want to get your business out there, you want to get your name out there in terms of marketing, there's nothing better than putting together a brand story. And everybody's story is unique. Don't be afraid to tell it. That's an excuse.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
afraid. There's fear.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not talking about myself here at all.
You do a good job. You put a lot of good content out.
Oh, thank you,
Yeah.
Matt. I really appreciate that because, I feel like I could use an extra little bit of help sometimes too. So who knows? Maybe you'll see my email in your inbox.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I work with a lot of people. I've got like 5 clients right now I'm working with that are all advisors that I'm all helping to scale. A couple that are not advisors too, but telling their brand story is really important. And it's interesting when you start talking to somebody, you ask them the right questions and they will bring up that really important thing about themselves that you're like, wow, that's really interesting. Like a guy I'm working with right now is like, he's an advisor. He's talking really pretty nerdy, and he's like, and talking about his way he works with investments. And he's like, and the reason why I do this is, and I'm so into analyzing risk, is because when I was in Vietnam and the bullets were hitting the cockpit, I had to analyze risk very quickly. I was like, do you ever talk about that in any of the content that you put out? He's like, no. I'm like, okay, so you learn to analyze risk in combat. But a lot of people don't understand that that's part of it. They think just their business is part of what they need to position. Like, I'm just going to talk about my business and that's it. No, it's the emotion that sells.
Yeah, that's so
Mm-hmm.
true. And especially a good comeback story.
Yeah, that's true.
People really do love a good comeback story, right? Because there was a time where I was terrified to share my story. And actually, I have you to thank for that
Really?
because you're the very first person that ever asked me to be on a podcast to tell my story about being in organized crime and whatnot.
Yeah.
I was terrified to tell my story. It was you that helped me transition that, by the way. I just want you to know.
Wow. Yeah, I say it's so funny. We don't even consider like what sometimes the impact we're having because I've just been so open about sharing and so raw about it all, that I'm glad that you did that though. You've done really well. Like I know it's hard. You put together a lot of good stuff and you're working really hard. Very proud of everything. I watch all your stuff.
Oh, good. Thank you. I really appreciate
Mhm.
that, Matt. And you know what? 2025 is, I've got some goals around the technological
Mhm.
part, right? Which again, we got hit with some tech gremlins today, and just learning a little bit more about that. But no, thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate your time today. And is there anything else you wanted the listeners to know though before we wrap up?
No, that was great. It was great to
Yeah.
chat with you. Great to connect with
Yeah.
you. I have no idea how long we've even been going because I don't have my glasses on, probably forever. But you and I can talk a long time.
No, we've been actually an hour and 45 minutes, and
Whoa!
at least an yeah, and at least an hour and 30 minutes of content. Like this particular recording is an hour and a 30, and then we still have bits and pieces from our little tech
I
gremlins.
hope that
So
doesn't cause you a lot of problems.
oh God, no. You know what, Matt? I have to say that I actually really enjoy behind the scenes because I do all of my own editing and stuff.
Hmm.
And I actually quite enjoy it. One day I might have a budget to hire somebody, outsource it, but for now it's a one woman show.
We'll see how long I have
But
the
I
budget to
enjoy
do it.
it.
I don't have the budget that much longer to do it. Honestly, it's like after getting fired, it's like, well, I'm really taking a chance on all of this, just so you know. Like I decided with the book, I'm like, that's it. Like I just grabbed that 401k, pulled it out.
I'm proud of you too. You know what? You've been a huge inspiration for me, and I want to help you share your message too, right? So I'm going to yell this from the rooftops. And when that book comes out, it's going to make it behind the brick and mortar where I'm working. So
Nice. Yeah, that'll be great. I'll make sure you get it.